Hello and welcome, guys. Today we're going to talk about emotional socialization, and this is beginning of our new course, new training. So as you know, on my channel you can find several playlists with different techniques, with different trainings, depending on the sphere you're working with. And I already have one playlist about basic emotional skills. So this is continuation of this playlist, and we're gonna talk about um, emotional schemes. Emotional schemes are basically ideas, assumptions, beliefs that we might have about emotions, and that um, can result in poor strategies to manage emotional arousal, poor ways to react to emotions, poor emotional expression, regulation, and so on. So this whole playlist will be like kind of like going through emotional schemes therapy. This is a special direction in therapy that deals with beliefs about emotions. So we will go step by step as usual, finishing every video with a home task that you need to do, and then starting the next video in a week. So today in particular, we're going to talk about emotional socialization, what it is, how it can form our views about emotions. I remind you that the basic idea about from cognitive behavioral therapy is that our views about things influence what we feel about them and how we act in front of them. So, same way, our views about emotions influence the way that we act and the way that we feel when we face them. So, for example, if you feel that anger is fine and you face it, then you're gonna manage it pretty effectively. However, if you believe that anger is horrible and destructive, and you would feel shame in this case and guilt, while in reality anger is fine, and because of shame and guilt you will feel even worse and maybe end up using some kind of behaviors that are not necessarily beneficial for you, like addictions, overeating, or getting into conflicts with your loved ones, and so on. So basically, how we view emotions is extremely important. However, not all of us actually realize what is the healthy view of emotions, and also not all of us realize which beliefs we already have about emotions, because they are often kind of subtle and unconscious. They get um, kind of they soak in our mind during our growing up years, during our childhood and older ages, and it kind of preps us to see the world in a certain way and to see emotions in a certain way. So emotional socialization, what is it? It's process that we go through in childhood and then continue in adult life that teaches us what are good emotions, what are bad emotions, how to react to emotions, how to manage your reaction, what it means to have emotions, and so on and so on and so on. So all the information we have about emotions is normally result of our emotional socialization. And there are different models of reacting to our emotions that our parents might use in our childhood, mm, and they later on in our life remain with us. For example, let's go through main negative examples. Example number one is laughing about emotions. Like when a child gets upset, laughing about it. Or when a child talks about their romantic feelings for some fellow kindergartner and parents laugh about it. For parents it might be not a big deal, but for the child they might feel intense shame and stop expressing their love and affection altogether, um, especially to their parents and especially to anyone they think might laugh at them. So you see one small case and then it influences child's life. So example number one is when parents laugh at emotions. They might laugh at anger, they might laugh at your sadness, they might laugh at your love and affection and make you feel ashamed of those. They might laugh about your joy, and so on and so on and so on. Um, In this way, they show neglect for emotions, they show that emotions are not important, and they also make the person feel invalidated, their child. And unfortunately, such subtle things, they do leave emotional damage on a person. So, case number one, laughing about emotions. And of course, parents who laugh about emotions of their children, they probably themselves don't have much of emotional skills, so they cannot teach their children to react in the right way. Example number two is when emotions are talked about as something dangerous and harmful. Like, in family, they talk about how decisions need to be rational, how you should not follow your emotions, how people end up, I don't know, in horrible distress if they follow their emotions. And in such family, there is this belief um, that emotions are bad, you should control them or you should get rid of them, and you should follow your rational self, and so on. But emotions are like integral part of ourselves, and we cannot get rid of them. If we're trying to fight them, we just fighting against ourselves, and it's just not gonna end well, I promise. So instead, we need to learn to work with emotions, learn to accept them, learn to deal with them. But in such a family, this idea that emotions are dangerous and so on. And by the way, you can see this in ideology in even like societies. Like for example, in patriarchal societies, we hear it very often that emotions are something women have, and it's like chaos and mindfulness, and like thinking, rational thinking is something that men have, and this is supposedly order and all that. So sometimes it even goes on a societal level, and we see that men who would benefit from emotional skills and emotional regulation skills the most, they start believing that, oh, emotions are for women and it's better, blah blah blah. Here we go to another example where we learn that emotions are dangerous and harmful. It is when our own parents cannot regulate their emotions and cannot also tolerate our emotions. When it happens, for example, you as a child see your parents fighting, swearing, throwing things at each other, shouting, and so on and so on, breaking up, and having this kind of catastrophic relationship, you see that your parents cannot control their own emotions and cannot properly regulate them, and they cannot properly express themselves. And this gives you this belief that emotions are too powerful for my parents to control. Emotions are dangerous. They make my parents behave in this way. Of course, it's not that, how to say, exact. It's kind of, how to say, the child doesn't think in those words, but this is what's getting in their baggage about emotions in their socialization. So emotions are seen as horrible, emotions are seen as very powerful, emotions are seen as something that you cannot control and that is very dangerous. And because the child sees that parents cannot tolerate emotions, emotions are seen as something scary. And such a child growing up, they might not learn to tolerate the discomfort of different emotions and accept that this is just emotion. It's not going to do anything for me. Emotion is just emotion, nothing scary. Instead, they just try to avoid emotions by all means. They can try to distract themselves, they can try to avoid talking about their feelings and their preferences, they can try to lie to themselves, even that, oh, I don't feel jealous, no, 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 not at all, or oh no, I don't feel angry, and such and so on and so on. And this avoidance of emotions and inability to deal with them leads to the point when your emotions accumulate, then explode, and the consequences are disastrous. So in reality, emotions are nothing dangerous. Emotions are just sensations that we go through, some states that we go through. They don't last in eternity. Emotions are not the same as actions, so you can feel angry doesn't mean that you need to fight someone. You can control yourself at this point. And emotions are pretty harmless if you know how to deal with them. And you are on this track, so stay with me. Okay, next one. We already mentioned it a bit. It's gender stereotypes about emotions. This is also what a child gets through socialization at school, in their family, watching movies, and so on and so on. Boys, for example, suffer from it the most. They learn that crying is bad, showing affection is bad, being childish and kind of playful is bad. I don't know, being creative and expressive and loud is kind of girlish, you should to be serious and all that. Girls also suffer from this. They, for example, often are forbidden from expressing their anger, and then if they show any anger, they are being called unpleasant things. So in result, we have that a child gets different like gendered stereotypes about emotions, and this doesn't let them regulate their emotions properly. Actually, if we take away all the silly stereotypes about emotions, most children can regulate them on their own. Okay, so it's not that. Okay, but let's skip through this. Um, so this is our fourth example, gendered education about emotions. Next, we have physical touch, number 5. In some families, it is widely accepted, and in some cultures, it is widely accepted to express your emotions through physical touch, and it is seen as normal. In some families, the relationship between people are rather cold and kind of distant, and they don't touch each other so much and don't express emotions through physical touch. And as a result, we can see, for example, adult person growing up and not knowing how to touch another person. And like, for example, men who then come to psychologists and like, I cannot dare to touch a girl on a date. But this is partly because they don't touch anyone. They don't touch their family members, they don't touch their friends. And of course, suddenly starting to touch someone feels very unusual. And this is also, by the way, connected to gendered education, because boys are seen that boys don't touch, boys don't hug, boys don't share affection in such ways, and so on. Maximum they can touch if they fight or have sex. This is the manly way. So yeah, actually it prevents the person to develop this sensitivity when it's right, when it's not right, how to touch, what it is all about, how to actually introduce physical touch and interaction with other people. And also it's really detrimental for mental health, because physical touch, hugging, holding hands, I don't know, just sitting nearby, or basically all of the physical touch is very important for mental health. It makes us feel better. So um, yes, this kind of physical touch. And then there can be another trauma about physical touch. It's when a child gets physically abused in different ways, and then they might also don't not have this way of expressing their emotions through physical touch. Okay, here we have next one. um, what we might also learn is that our emotions need to be avoided, and we might learn different strategies of avoidance, like for example eating or playing some games or browsing through internet and so on and so on. And this is parents who taught us, and then we continue repeating the same strategies in our adult life. So Then also another example, number 7, and this is the last example here, is hyper control. Like when we try to over control our emotions. Often it also comes from this idea that emotions are dangerous or they're bad or something like this. And we try to over control and kind of pay so much attention to our every single emotion, and this is simply draining you of energy. So yes, these are main examples about different stereotypes, different beliefs that we might get through our education, through our emotional socializations, and then they continue influencing our adult life. And we kind of need to correct the damage and learn skills that we didn't learn in childhood. Like, for example, men need to learn skills how to show their affection, how to actually physically touch in a nice way, respecting other people's boundary and all that, how to express sadness and so on. A person who is thinking like, oh, emotions are scary, I should never accept I have emotions, needs to learn to be honest with themselves about emotions. And also some people who were like hiding their emotions from themselves for a long time, they might not even know how to understand what you feel. Like you ask them, how are you feeling right now? And they're like, I don't know. I don't know. I just feel fine or bad or good. These are like three main words. So yes, developing emotional vocabulary is also part of it. Now let's talk about different strategies. Strategies with which we react to emotions are also part of our emotional socialization, and we're gonna talk about them in the next video. But now your home task will be analyzing your childhood, analyzing your past, analyzing culture in which you grew up, and trying to figure out what ideas about emotions, about emotional expression, about what is good, what is bad about emotions, and so on, were like prevalent in your emotional socialization. So it's better if you write it down, because we will need this exercise in the future videos. So yes, this is your home task. Please write it down, your analysis, which emotions and how were possible and were influenced by different beliefs in your early socialization. Here it's also important that to differentiate by emotion. Like, for example, in your family, maybe anger was okay to express, but expressing affection and love was not common. Or the opposite, affection and love was okay, but anger was not allowed to express. So in each individual case, different emotions can be like forbidden, and different emotions can be seen as dangerous, while other emotions can be seen as okay. So please pay attention and kind of analyze it from the point of view of different emotions, not just emotions in general. Yes, and in the next video we're going to talk about strategies that we get from our emotional socialization. And I see you soon. Bye bye.